Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're focusing on something pretty significant, a real historical marker, September 2025. That's the date set for the final retirement of the legendary MiG-21 fighter jet from the Indian Air Force. We're talking, 6 decades of service?
Yeah, 6 decades. It's actually hard to overstate how big a moment this is. I mean, this aircraft, it isn't just some old piece of hardware getting phased out. For generations, really, the MiG-21 was the Indian Air Force in the public eye, a symbol of, ambition, national confidence, and also, tragically, immense sacrifice.
Absolutely. It's got this dual legacy, hasn't it? The hero, the workhorse, but also, a really stark indicator of challenges in India's defense planning over the years. So our mission today is basically to trace that incredible journey, how India, as a post-colonial nation, used this Soviet jet to really build itself up as a regional aerospace power. We'll get into the MiG-21's battlefield wins, the really tough controversies around its safety, and what its retirement actually means for India's defense going forward.
And it's fascinating because the story really kicks off right in the thick of the Cold War. You have to go back to 1963.
Okay, let's start there then. 1963, India is newly independent, officially non-aligned, but the pressure's on immediately, right?
Oh, immense pressure. The world's split. Bipolar. And India is facing a direct, serious threat from Pakistan, which was getting increasingly well-armed. The West, particularly the U.S., was actively supplying Pakistan with some pretty advanced aircraft for the time. We're talking F-86 Sabres and, critically, the F-104 Starfighter.
The Starfighter. Mach 2 capable, a real challenge. So India needed something fast, something modern to counter that. But the West wasn't playing ball.
Not really. They were quite reluctant to transfer that kind of cutting-edge tech to non-aligned India, so India had to look elsewhere.
Which led them where? And what was the thinking behind that pivotal decision?
It led them to the Soviet Union. And the Soviets, they offered the McCoy and Gurevich MiG-21. It was small, very fast, a potent supersonic interceptor. And maybe just as importantly, it was affordable. It fit the bill.
But the really strategic move, the thing that makes this different from just buying planes off the shelf, wasn't just getting the jet itself.
Exactly. That's the crucial part. India secured a full license to manufacture the MiG-21 domestically at Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, HAL. Think about that. India became the first country outside the Soviet bloc and outside the Warsaw Pact to not only fly the MiG-21, but to actually build it.
That detail often gets glossed over, but it's huge for the long term. It wasn't just a purchase. It was a genuine technology transfer, wasn't it? What did setting up that production line at HAL actually mean?
It was a total game changer. It meant India wasn't just a customer anymore, dependent on foreign suppliers for every spare part, every bit of maintenance know-how. It meant they could build their own supersonic fighters. That laid the groundwork, the industrial base, the skills needed for everything that came later, all the indigenous projects. It fundamentally shifted India's strategic autonomy.
And the sheer scale was incredible, too. They ended up producing, over 600 MiG-21s over the years. It truly became the backbone.
Over 600. And the immediate impact was this massive technological jump. Before the MiG-21, the IAF was flying subsonic stuff, mostly. Hawker Hunters, Gnats. Good planes, but subsonic. Suddenly they had a Mach 2 interceptor that instantly gave them an air superiority edge, completely changing their defensive posture.
And it didn't take long for it to prove itself in combat.
No, it didn't. Even in the '65 war with Pakistan, when it was still relatively new in service and up against those capable American jets, the MiG-21 held its ground surprisingly well against the F-104s.
But the conflict that really etched the MiG-21 into the Indian psyche, the one everyone remembers, that was the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War.
Absolutely. That was its finest hour, you could say. MiG-21s were flying constant ground attack missions, hitting tanks, Pakistani airfields, infrastructure, and critically, they scored decisive air-to-air kills, famously shooting down several Pakistani F-104 starfighters.
That must have been a huge psychological boost, not just a tactical win, taking down the supposedly superior Western tech.
It absolutely was. It cemented the IAF's image as a modern, capable force. It showed that skill, training, and strategy could win the day. The MiG-21 really earned India global respect in the air.
But, and it's a big but, isn't it? That respect, that legendary status, it came at an absolutely devastating cost over the long run. We have to talk about the other side of the coin now, the paradox of this aircraft.
Yeah, the dark side. Because for all its glory in '71, the MiG-21 eventually earned that grim nickname, the Flying Coffin.
It's unavoidable. The safety record It's stark.
It's tragic, really. If you look at the data, between the 1970s and well into the 2010s, hundreds of these jets were lost in crashes. Hundreds. And the human cost is just staggering. Over 200 pilots lost their lives in these accidents, many of them young pilots, still in training.
Looking through the analysis, the reasons seemed complex. It wasn't just one single thing, was it?
No, not at all. It was sort of a perfect storm of factors converging over time. First, you just had the age of the basic airframe. It was a 1950s design, fundamentally, being pushed decades beyond what it was ever intended for. Second, especially in the earlier years, there were definitely issues with maintenance practices, sourcing reliable spares. That infrastructure took time to mature. And third, the original design just lacked the kind of safety systems we take for granted today. No sophisticated ejection seats in the early models, certainly no fly-by-wire flight controls to help manage its, let's say, demanding handling characteristics.
Which, understandably, led to public outcry. If the jet was so notoriously dangerous, why on earth did the IAF keep flying it for so long? Well into the 2000s, why did it stay the workhorse?
That's where you dive into this difficult period of, well, almost strategic paralysis for India. It boils down to a few harsh realities. The MiG-21 was cheap to operate, it was fast, and crucially, India could build it itself. It was available in large numbers when other options weren't. And India faced some really severe budget constraints through much of the 80s and 90s.
And then came the sanctions, right? Especially after the 98 nuclear tests. That must have had a huge impact.
Precisely. Crippling international sanctions cut off access to Western aircraft, Western parts, new technologies. So the IAF was almost forced to double down on the Soviet origin platforms they could maintain and produce domestically. Plus, you had those infamous, really frustrating delays in India's own indigenous replacement, the light combat aircraft program, the Tejas.
Ah, the Tejas saga. Years and years of delays.
Exactly. So the Tejas wasn't ready to replace the MiGs on schedule. There were no other affordable, available alternatives in sufficient numbers. This left the IAF leadership in a terrible bind. Keep flying the aging, dangerous MiG-21s to maintain squadron strength, or face a massive capability gap. They chose to keep flying them.
So the MiG-21 essentially plugged a decades-long gap caused by a mix of sanctions, budget issues, and delays in their own programs.
That's a good way to put it. It was a stopgap that lasted far, far too long, a sort of vicious cycle. No money for new imports, the domestic option wasn't ready, so keep the old workhorse going until crashes forced the issue.
Which brings us right up to today and the final retirement scheduled for 2025. It seems like time has just definitively run out for the old bird. Even the upgraded Bison variants.
It really has. The strategic imperative is clear now. The basic design, even with modern avionics bolted on, it just can't compete anymore. Not against the kinds of advanced threats emerging in the region.
And we're talking about some very sophisticated potential adversaries now. China's J-20 stealth fighters, for instance. Pakistan's newer JF-17s.
Especially the JF-17 Block 3. That aircraft comes equipped with an ESA radar active electronically scanned array. That's a completely different league of technology. It gives much better detection range, you can track multiple targets, it's harder to jam. The MiG-21, even the Bison, simply doesn't have the sensors, the low observable features, or frankly, the survivability to go head-to-head with that kind of threat anymore. The risk calculus has completely flipped.
Okay, so retiring the MiG-21 isn't just about getting rid of old planes. It signals a really fundamental shift in air doctrine for India, doesn't it? The MiG era was all about numbers, quantity, having hundreds of fighters, over 800 at the peak. What's the new focus?
It's a decisive shift from quantity to quality. Technology, survivability, network-centric warfare, multi-role capability, that's the focus now. India's strategic outlook has changed too. The IAF needs to be prepared for a potential two-front scenario, dealing with both Pakistan and China. That means the doctrine has to evolve beyond just simple air defense towards projecting power, achieving effects deep into enemy territory, and operating across the wider Indian Ocean region.
Right. So that obviously creates a huge need for new capabilities.
Yeah.
What specific programs are stepping up to fill the boots of the MiG-21?
Well, the first and arguably the most important symbolically is the Tejas Light Combat Aircraft, the LCA. This is the indigenous successor, lightweight, agile. The current Mk1A version is entering service in numbers, and the larger, more capable Mk2 is under development. Getting the Tejas right is crucial. It finally fulfills that promise of self-reliance that started way back with the MiG-21 license in '63. Reducing dependence on foreign fighters is key.
And we're already seeing the impact of the high-end foreign jets that have come in recently.
Oh, absolutely. The French Rafale jets have been a significant boost. They bring truly modern avionics, integrated sensors, electronic warfare suites, and critically advanced weapons like the Meteor Beyond Visual Range air-to-air missile. That missile gives Indian pilots the ability to engage targets much, much further away than anything the MiG-21 could dream of. And the IAF is still looking to buy more jets in that medium weight category through the MRFA tender.
But the real long-term ambition, the thing that signals India joining the top tier, that's the AMCA project, right?
The AMCA Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, yes. That's India's flagship program for a homegrown fifth-generation stealth fighter. The goal there is genuine, low-observable, network-enabled strike capability. Designed specifically to counter threats like the J-20 and whatever comes next, that's looking towards the 2030s.
And it's not just about manned fighters anymore, is it? How do drones and unmanned systems fit into this new picture?
They're becoming absolutely critical. You see investment in high-altitude, long-endurance armed drones, like the American MQ-9B Predators India is acquiring, but also, importantly, a lot of focus on indigenous efforts, like developing autonomous swarm drones and loyal wingman concepts. The future involves these unmanned systems working alongside and even protecting the expensive manned jets.
And looking at the bigger picture, the support systems, the focus seems less on things like traditional long-range bombers and more on enabling the fighters they do have.
That's right. It's all about maximizing the effectiveness of the fighter fleet. So huge emphasis on force multipliers. Things like AICS aircraft airborne early warning and control for better battlefield awareness. Mid-air refueling tankers to extend the range and endurance of fighters. And dedicated electronic warfare platforms to jam enemy radars and communications. These support assets are vital for complex operations against sophisticated opponents.
Okay, so as the MiG-21 prepares for its final bow in 2025, it really leaves behind this complex, conflicting legacy. You've got the flying coffin narrative, but also the people's fighter, the guardian of the skies for so long. There's pride, definitely pain, and some hard-learned lessons, especially about the cost of delaying modernization and the absolute need for self-reliance.
It truly was the backbone for a critical period in India's rise. Its retirement isn't just an end, it's a necessary step in a transformation. Moving from an era defined by just holding the line, by sheer numbers, to an era aiming for technological dominance and precision warfare. The future IAF will likely be leaner, but much deadlier and better integrated.
So, the end of the MiG-21 era clearly signals India's big shift away from focusing on just having lots of jets, towards prioritizing cutting-edge technology and lethality, which leaves a final thought for you, our listener, as these new advanced platforms come online. What does this necessary reliance on incredibly complex and, frankly, extraordinarily expensive fifth-generation jets like the AMCA actually mean? What does it mean for a nation's ability to rapidly scale up its air power if, God forbid, a major unexpected conflict flares up quickly?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? It touches on defense budgets, industrial capacity, training pipelines, a huge challenge for modern air forces everywhere.
Something to think about. Until next time, keep diving deep into the stories that shape our world.
Thank you for joining us on this Strategic Vanguard podcast. If you found value in this analysis, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We bring you fresh podcasts every Monday here on YouTube and Rumble, and you can also catch the audio versions on Spotify and Amazon Music. Just search for Strategic Vanguard Podcast. For more insights, articles, and discussions, subscribe to our blog at strategicvanguard.com. Your support helps us grow and bring you more in-depth analysis on defense, geopolitics, and strategy. Until next time, stay informed, stay strategic.